If you're staring at a job description thinking, I'm missing half these tools, I want you to hear this. I almost rejected one of the best data scientists I've ever hired because she didn't know SQL. Yes, SQL. Apparently, all your fancy degrees and Python mastery can vanish the moment someone asks, can you write a join? A few years ago, I was interviewing candidates for a data scientist role. I was doing the initial phone screen, deciding who should move on to a 90-minute technical interview. This is a grueling 90 minutes that I conduct personally to really run each candidate through the gamut. And in this pre-screen, this phone screen in advance of that, this candidate was crushing it. She had a recent PhD and serious depth in Python, machine learning, and statistics. She was the kind of candidate where you start rooting for them halfway through the interview because they're just doing so well. Then the music stopped. No SQL. Not limited SQL. Zero. I could already see where this was headed. She'd get to the SQL section of the 90-minute technical screen in the next round. She would stall out, and we'd have to reject her. But instead of ending the process, I made her an unusual offer. I told her I was going to be away for 10 days on a well-deserved vacation. I said, if you commit to becoming an advanced SQL user over the next week and a half, then when I get back, we will do the interview. No guarantees, no coaching, no study plan, just 10 days and a chance to figure it out. She didn't hesitate to accept the challenge. And what she did with those 10 days ended up telling me far more than whether she already knew SQL. 10 days later, we sat down. The first thing she told me was that she was nervous. Window functions still weren't clicking. Window functions are where SQL starts getting passive-aggressive. It's like the code is looking at you saying, I told you how this works, you just weren't listening. Then we started the assessment. She talked through her reasoning as she worked. She wasn't just guessing, she was explaining how she was thinking, and that mattered. Because most candidates perform, she problem solved. Then she got stuck. It was a join. It's always a join. For a moment, I wondered if the SQL gap was telling me something more important. Not whether she knew SQL, whether she could learn under pressure. Then she caught her mistake. She said it out loud, fixed it, kept going. And then she did something that genuinely surprised me. She correctly wrote a SQL query that most candidates never get right in my technical screens. Not most candidates who don't know SQL, most candidates, period. And that's when I saw it. Not perfection, recovery. That's the difference between someone who knows things and someone who can figure things out. In that moment, I stopped interviewing for SQL knowledge and started interviewing for learning speed. We ran out of time before we got through the last couple of questions. It wasn't a perfect interview. She hadn't become a SQL expert in 10 days, but I'd seen enough. I wasn't hiring her because she'd mastered SQL in 10 days. I was hiring her because she'd shown me she could learn. We hired her, and a year later, she was helping new analysts get up to speed on SQL. The skill that almost cost her the job became a skill she eventually taught to other people. Here's what I was really evaluating in that interview. When an interviewer discovers that you don't know something, you might think the question is, do I know the answer? Sometimes that's exactly the question, but often there's a more important question underneath it. What does this person do when they don't? That's what I was really evaluating. I wasn't testing whether she'd memorized SQL. I was testing what happened when she reached the edge of what she knew. Did she freeze? Did she bluff? Did she give up? Or could she figure out what she was missing, work through it, recognize a mistake, and most importantly, keep moving? She showed me the last one, and that mattered more than the fact that she'd started the interview process with zero SQL. Because the job you're interviewing for today probably won't be the exact job you're doing 2 years from now. The tools will change, the problems will get harder, the data will be messier. The requirements will evolve halfway through the project, and someone will need it yesterday. Eventually, someone will hand you a problem where your first thought is, I have absolutely no idea how to do this. That's not a career failure, that's Tuesday. The question is what happens next. So if you're interviewing and you hit a gap, here's what I'd do. Don't bluff. This isn't poker, and by the way, your poker face is terrible. Instead, say what you do know. Explain how you'd approach the problem. Think out loud, ask a good clarifying question if you need one, and if you make a mistake, don't panic. Walk back through your reasoning. Find where you went wrong, correct it, keep going. Because you're not being evaluated only on whether you have every answer memorized, you're showing someone how you reason when the answer isn't obvious. And that's much closer to what real work actually looks like. Real work isn't a clean technical interview question. It's an open book exam where the book is wrong. The requirements changed yesterday, and someone wants the answer in 30 minutes. The best data scientists I know use AI constantly. They use LLMs to explore unfamiliar concepts, generate hypotheses, debug code, challenge their assumptions, and get unstuck. The dangerous ones aren't the people who use AI, they're the people who use it without understanding what it's giving them. Because AI can generate an answer in seconds, that doesn't mean it's the right answer. You still need to know how to think. You need to recognize when the output just doesn't make any sense. You need to ask better questions. You need to validate the results. You need to be someone who can recognize what you don't know, use the tools available to close the gap, and keep moving. You don't need to prove that you've already seen every possible problem. You need to show that when you encounter a problem you've never seen before, you know how to start solving it. That's a very different standard. Now, this doesn't mean skill requirements don't matter. They do. If a job genuinely requires 10 years of specialized experience, you probably shouldn't expect someone to acquire it in 10 days. Good luck with that. The gap has to be genuinely learnable. The role has to allow for growth, and you still need to meet the requirements that are truly essential to doing the job. But there's a difference between saying this person doesn't know SQL and this person can't become productive with SQL. That's the mistake I almost made. I had mistaken a gap in knowledge for a gap in capability, so I changed the test. Instead of only asking, does she know SQL, I created an opportunity to observe. What does she do when she realizes she doesn't know SQL? That turned out to be a much better signal, because hiring processes are very good at being consistent. They're not always equally good at being right. We build elaborate scorecards, convince ourselves we've reduced hiring to a math equation, and then act surprised when real-life humans routinely color outside of our confidence intervals. So if you're looking at a job description thinking, I don't have everything they're asking for, take a breath, know your gaps, be honest about them, be realistic about whether they're learnable, because I don't know this yet and I can't learn this are not the same sentence. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can demonstrate isn't what you already know, it's what you do 5 minutes after realizing you don't. Because the best candidates aren't the ones who have already seen every problem. They're the ones who can walk into a problem they've never seen before and figure out where to start. That's what I almost missed. I thought I was evaluating what she knew. I was actually evaluating what she was capable of becoming. And those are two very different things. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.